Hey there, lovely soul. Welcome back to Noah's Stories. How have you been lately? Have you taken a moment to breathe, to pause, to feel something real? Today's story is one that might just stir your heart. A quiet kind of love, born not from grand gestures, but from sacrifice, understanding, and the courage to rebuild. Grab a cozy drink, find a quiet spot, and let's step into the world of Lucas and Mira. This one stays with you. Lucas had always been a determined man. From a young age, he knew exactly what he wanted: to create architectural works that would leave a lasting mark. With a sharp mind and enviable discipline, Lucas transformed the small design firm he inherited from his father into a nationally recognized architectural empire. By the age of 35, he was already one of the most admired and successful architects in the field. His life followed a meticulously organized rhythm, waking up at 5 a.m., exercising, eating a healthy breakfast, and working tirelessly until late at night. Weekends were almost a foreign concept to him, and holidays were merely opportunities to work without interruptions. That obsessive dedication brought impressive financial rewards and industry acclaim, but behind the glass walls of his towering office, Lucas's personal life was barren, like a desert. Romantic relationships were fleeting and lacked depth. Friendships were limited to a few business partners and some familiar faces from the tennis club he rarely visited. Though he tried to ignore it, Lucas could feel the creeping loneliness settling in. Frequent headaches, persistent insomnia, and a constant sense of exhaustion had become regular companions in his day-to-day life. One late night, while working at his office with an unfinished design glowing on the screen, Lucas felt a sharp pain in his chest. At first, he dismissed it as stress, but within minutes, sweat poured down his face and his breathing turned shallow. In a rare moment of surrender, Lucas had no choice but to dial for emergency help. He was rushed to the emergency room of a nearby hospital. Amid the noise of beeping machines and hurried footsteps, the man who once controlled every aspect of his world now lay helpless on a stretcher, surrounded by unfamiliar doctors and nurses. And that was when he saw her. Mira walked into the room, a 30-year-old nurse with soft eyes and a soothing voice, yet a gaze that held surprising strength. Her brown hair was neatly tied up, and the way she moved brought a calm to the entire room. "Mr. Lucas, how are you feeling now?" Mira asked, her eyes scanning the monitors beside his bed. "Better. When can I get out of here? I've got an important meeting early tomorrow morning," Lucas replied, still with his usual urgency. Mira looked up, concern flickering in her eyes, though her lips held a faint smile. "I understand you're busy, but your heart isn't on the same schedule, and from what I can see, it's not just your heart asking for a break." Her words, gentle but layered, made Lucas pause. It was rare for anyone to speak to him like that, without fear, without flattery. And for the first time in years, he actually listened. In the days that followed, Lucas was required to stay in the hospital for further tests and monitoring. Though he initially felt frustrated by the disruption to his work, Mira's presence made everything feel lighter. She was always calm, attentive, and appeared whenever Lucas needed her. There was no flattery, no fuss, just a sincere, grounded presence. When Lucas was finally discharged, he assumed he would jump right back into his usual work rhythm, but Mira's words lingered in his mind, especially the way she had looked at him when she said, "It's not just your heart asking for a break." A few days later, Lucas returned to the hospital for a follow-up. He ran into Mira in the hallway and his heart skipped, not from any medical condition this time, but something else entirely. Summoning a kind of courage he rarely used outside of boardrooms, he invited her for a coffee. To his surprise, Mira smiled and accepted. That coffee turned into dinner, then into more spontaneous dates. Mira took him for walks in the park on Sundays, showed him movies that had nothing to do with architecture or business, and made him laugh more than he thought possible. With Mira, Lucas wasn't just a busy executive, he was a man with dreams and fears. And it was her quiet understanding of that truth that slowly opened his heart, piece by piece. Lucas had never been good at expressing emotions, but with Mira, something felt different. He couldn't stop thinking about her, her soft smile, steady gaze, and the way she made him feel seen, not as a name on a Forbes list, but as a real person. The first time he asked her out for coffee, he rehearsed the line 3 times in his car. When she said yes, it felt like a weight had lifted off his chest. Their first date took place in a quiet little cafe, where warm yellow light spilled across worn wooden tables. Lucas talked about business trips and hidden pressures, while Mira listened, never interrupting, never judging. She simply placed her hand on her cup of tea and said, "I don't think anyone's ever really listened to you." After that, Lucas became more intentional. One weekend, he suggested a trip to the beach, just the 2 of them, no schedule, no work calls. They walked barefoot along the shore. Well, Mira did, and Lucas tried. She shared stories from her childhood, and he spoke of the loneliness that had shadowed his adulthood. Evenings turned into movie nights under the stars, shared ice cream on park benches, or simply cooking together in her tiny kitchen. Lucas didn't try to impress her with grand gestures. He just showed up, honestly and fully. And that was what made Mira slowly let her guard down. She wasn't someone who trusted easily, but Lucas made her feel safe, as if, for the first time, she could believe in a man without fear. The love between Lucas and Mira grew quietly yet firmly, not flashy or poetic, but rooted in moments that felt honest and true. Mira made Lucas feel like he could be his most genuine self, while Lucas gave Mira a safe space to lean into. No control, no judgment. 6 months after their first trip to the beach, Lucas proposed. No flowers, no candlelight, just a crisp morning. Looking at her through a misty window, he softly said, "I'm not sure I'll ever be the perfect husband, but I'm certain I want to learn how to be one. With you." Mira paused, then smiled. For her, love didn't need to be grand, just real. They held a simple wedding in the garden Mira always loved, warm, intimate, with only those who truly mattered. Mira was radiant in an elegant white dress, and Lucas watched her walk toward him as if she were the only person left in the world. The months that followed were among the happiest of their lives. Lucas started to slow down, delegating more work, reducing weekend meetings, and spending more time at home. He discovered joy in cooking with Mira, reading side by side, or simply talking aimlessly at the end of a long day. Mira continued her work as a nurse, living as simply as she always had. She never asked for anything, never mentioned wealth or status, and that made Lucas love her even more each day. Lucas's mother, Eleanor, deeply adored Mira. From their first meeting, she had said, "That girl has the warmest eyes." Mira didn't treat her like a duty, but like a second mother. They spent afternoons gardening, cooking together, or chatting for hours. Eleanor once told Lucas, "Mira brings a kind of peace I don't think you've ever had before." From a man who once thought weekends were a waste, Lucas now cherished mornings without alarms and evenings without ringing phones. Those quiet moments, he had once ignored them. Now, he savored them. But happiness doesn't always linger as long as we wish. Faint clouds began to gather on the horizon, quiet, persistent. And though Lucas didn't want to admit it, he started to hear whispers around him. Small comments, soft as clock ticks, but relentless. Not everyone viewed Lucas and Mira's relationship with admiration. The comments began subtly, disguised as concern, but over time they became more direct and unavoidable. "Are you sure about this?" his father once asked over a quiet afternoon tea. "I don't mean anything by it, but Mira comes from a very different world than ours," he said calmly, though his eyes carried a quiet judgment. Only Lucas's mother, who adored Mira deeply, saw her as a daughter. The two were very close, and she never hesitated to defend Mira when others made veiled remarks. At the office, however, people were far less tactful. During a business lunch, one of Lucas's partners casually commented, "You've always been a smart guy, Lucas. But let's be honest, when a successful man marries a woman with no financial background, it's hard for people to believe it's true love." Even childhood friends started making jokes that felt more like jabs. "She must really love you, or maybe just your bank account," one of them quipped, drawing laughter from the table. Everyone except Lucas, who felt a tightness in his chest. At first, he dismissed the comments. He knew Mira. She had never asked for anything, never once shown interest in wealth. But those words, quiet yet relentless, chipped away at his certainty like rain carving into stone, each one echoing louder in his silence until doubt didn't just seep in, it settled. He started observing her more closely, how she never wanted expensive things, how she was content with simple dinners at home. Was that sincerity, or was it a way of appearing uninterested? Once planted, doubt began to grow, quietly, persistently. Lucas's quiet doubts eventually turned into a noticeable distance. He began canceling plans abruptly, using work as an excuse to avoid anniversaries, and stopped giving the small, spontaneous gifts he used to give Mira. He waited for signs of frustration, but none came. Mira only smiled gently and said, "I understand." Her patience, instead of calming him, only deepened his unease. He wanted something, anything, to confirm his suspicions, but Mira's calm presence only made him feel smaller, more conflicted. Then one evening, after yet another silent dinner, Lucas let out a sarcastic remark. "You seem pretty comfortable with the life I'm providing." Mira looked at him, her eyes welling with tears, not from sadness, but disappointment. "If you don't trust me, then what are we doing here?" she asked, her voice trembling but steady. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't argue. She simply stood up and walked into the guest room, closing the door quietly behind her. That night, alone in his study, Lucas couldn't sleep. He opened his laptop and absent-mindedly typed Mira's name into a search bar. It wasn't the first time, but this time he dug deeper, and what he found left him stunned. Among lists of outstanding graduates from years ago, Mira's name stood out. She had once been accepted into a prestigious international medical program, awarded a full scholarship, one of the highest scorers in the country. Lucas frowned. Why had she never mentioned it? Then he remembered, right after their wedding, when his mother fell seriously ill. Mira had been by her side from the first day. He never asked her to, but she stayed, quietly, devotedly, like a daughter. And then it hit him. Mira had silently buried her dream, not out of duty, but out of love. And while he was busy conquering the world, she was quietly saving his. Lucas sat alone in his study, the glow of the computer screen reflecting in his tired eyes. The information about Mira, prestigious scholarship, top national scores, a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, flashed before him like a punch to the gut. He couldn't understand how he had never asked, how, throughout all this time, he had never once truly considered the dreams of the woman who had stood by him through everything. He remembered the way Mira's eyes had once lit up when she mentioned she was waiting on something important, a result that clearly meant the world to her. He had brushed it off, distracted by deadlines and meetings. Now it was all painfully clear. Mira had let go of that dream, not because he asked her to, not because she had no other choice, but because she loved his mother, his family, and perhaps, even more than he deserved, she loved him. Lucas felt a tight knot in his throat. Guilt washed over him, heavy and merciless. He couldn't sit still. He stood up, following the faint clinking sound into the kitchen, where Mira stood, her hands trembling slightly as she poured tea into 2 cups. She looked up at him, saying nothing. No accusations, no anger, just quiet exhaustion in her eyes. "Mira," he whispered, voice choked with emotion. "I've been wrong. So wrong." She stayed silent. "I let meaningless words and judgmental glances cloud my vision. I doubted you, the one person who never gave me a single reason to doubt." Mira finally looked up, her eyes red. "I only wanted you to trust me, not because I sacrificed anything, but because I'm here, for you." Lucas stepped forward, gently taking her hands that had so often cared for his mother through sleepless nights. "I found your scholarship records. You gave up a dream that most people only dare to chase just to stay with my mother. You never said a word, you never asked for anything, you just loved, quietly." "I didn't want you to feel like you owed me anything," Mira whispered. "I did it because it was the right thing." Lucas lowered his head, a tear falling onto her hand. "It's because you never mentioned it that I realize how extraordinary you are. I wasn't the man you deserved, But if you let me, I'll spend every day proving I can become him. I want to stand beside you, not just as your husband, but as someone worthy of the love you've given so freely." She didn't answer. She just squeezed his hand, and that was enough. In the days that followed, something shifted in their home. The silence that had once felt heavy now felt gentle, like two people learning how to listen all over again. Lucas became more present. No more late-night meetings, no more bringing his laptop to bed. He began to prioritize the little things: a quiet breakfast with Mira, an afternoon walk around the neighborhood. Then, 1 week later, Lucas walked into the living room holding an envelope. "I have something for you," he said, placing it gently in front of Mira. She opened it and froze. An acceptance letter from a local medical university. Her eyes widened in disbelief. How did you do this?" Lucas smiled. "I called in a few favors. You already had the credentials. You just needed someone to notice. The rest is all you." Mira's voice trembled. "I thought that dream was too far gone." "That dream was always here," Lucas said, placing his hand over her heart. "I just helped you see it again." And so a new chapter began. Mira started her first days at medical school, not with pressure, but with the excitement of someone finally walking her true path. Lucas drove her every morning, waiting at a nearby cafe whenever her classes ran late. In the evenings, they studied together. Lucas didn't understand much about medicine, but he sat beside her anyway, just so she wouldn't feel alone. Their life no longer revolved around fancy dinners or luxurious gifts. Instead, it was built on shared moments: simple meals, warm hugs after exhausting days, spontaneous laughter amid the routine. Lucas learned to measure success not in contracts signed or projects completed, but in the way Mira's eyes lit up when she described an interesting case study. And Mira, no longer the quiet supporter in the background, now stood in her own light, living her dream and being loved for exactly who she was. One spring afternoon, as they strolled through the park hand in hand, Lucas looked ahead and said softly, "I don't know what the future holds, but with you by my side, I know we can face anything." Mira smiled, gently squeezing his hand. "I feel the same. I never imagined love would be like this. And I know this is only the beginning." And that's the story of Lucas and Mira, proof that love isn't always loud, but it's always powerful. If this story touched something in your heart, let us know in the comments. Have you ever witnessed a quiet kind of love like this? Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more soulful stories from Noah's Stories. Until next time, take care of your heart and stay open to the gentle kind of magic life offers.